Storytell Original presents 1986 Book 3, At the End of Time, by Jesper Ersgård, narrated by me, John Chancer. Part 1. Back to 1986. Saturday, March 1st, 1986. A moment. A second that extended forever. A weightless condition between two eras. Elias Werner traveled through the decades from 1963 to 1986. A journey that was over in one breath, but which he experienced as endless. During this second-long journey, he seemed to touch eternity, and millions of impressions flowed through his brain, all of which stuck in his memory. He remembered too much. The experiences swirled and caused an uproar inside him, like thousands of disordered photographs thrown into emptiness. The sword duel in 1628, the sinking of the Vasa, and Hedvig, the maid who helped him escape from the Three Crowns Castle. Followed by 1963, his parents brutally murdered on the ice, his father's prayer to save 10-year-old Elias, and finally, the sight of the child in the glass tank, his own dead body that was gradually taken over by a digital mind. He wasn't who he thought he was. He wasn't Elias Werner, the 33-year-old lawyer. Instead, his mind was an artificial creation implanted into the real Elias. In fact, his whole life was an illusion. He had only existed for 5 short years. Anything else was constructed memories of a life he had never lived. But he hadn't stopped in 1963. The Velatrice had torn him out of the petty villain Connie Ains' body and thrown him forward through the decades, back to his own body in 1986. This time, however, he had not gone alone. Maya had stood close to him, and he had dragged her away from the 60s. It shouldn't have been possible. She shouldn't have been able to travel back in time, but he had to help her. He controlled the Velatrice. After all, it was built for him. But something had gone wrong. Her scream enveloped him, a scream permeated by pain and fear. He fell heavily to the floor in front of the fireplace in the apartment at Prescott & 7 in Stockholm's Old Town. The dark March evening pressed against the windows, and he immediately felt, without really being able to explain how, that he was back in his own body and that the year was 1986. Maya lay next to him. She was back in her 27-year-old policewoman's body, but something was wrong. She wasn't moving. The silence frightened him more than the terrified scream had. Maya stared at him with panic in her eyes, her face deathly pale and her short blonde hair tangled with sweat. She wasn't breathing. Elias sat up and leaned over her. He gently put a hand on her cheek. "Maya? Can you hear me? Maya!" Her body was stiff, as if cramping, fixed in a rigid pose. He quickly unbuttoned her police jacket and loosened her uniform tie. But she still didn't breathe, just stared at him silently with panic in her eyes. It was as if she had somehow ended up misplaced in her own body, as if joints had shifted, organs were pushed out of place, as if her insides had been moved a few centimeters from where they should have been. A strong convulsion shook her, while a muffled sound was forced out of her lips. He clasped his hands and swore out loud. He had taken her back to the 80s, even though he knew there were risks. Now she was dying on the floor in front of him. He had killed her. A lone tear ran from one of Maya's eyes, and her gaze became cloudy. Elias gently put his arms around her and held her tightly. He closed his eyes and pressed
Sample complete. Ready to continue?